On this episode of Games and Grub, we review Luigi's Mansion and Chicken Tenders.
Welcome back to Games and Grub, everybody. Hope you're having a great day so far. We are your hosts, Jess.
Hello.
And Bennett. And buckle up because it's coming at you fast.
Alright, today's game that we're reviewing is Luigi's Mansion, which was originally released on the Gamecube in 2001, but it was also released on the 3DS in 2018. And yeah, it's an epic ghost hunting game where you star as Luigi and tackle some ghosts.
Absolutely, and this was really Luigi's first time as the main protagonist. There was, I believe, a game called Mario is Missing, but I don't think it was like a big release. It was just kind of a weird little side game that I don't think a lot of people played. I could be wrong, but this is really where Luigi is the star, which again is kind of the first time, which is pretty cool because he's a good character. And actually quite a bit different from Mario. He's a little bit more easily
cowardly.
Spooked.
Yeah.
Yes, cowardly. Mario jumps right in there. Luigi's a little bit more timid, but he gets to be the hero in this one, which is really cool.
As a Luigi fan, it has me stoked that he has his own game. And I mean, you know, there's later installments in the series, so he's had more chances to shine or whatever. But yeah, this is like the first game, and I thought it was such a cool concept that he got to star in it. And, you know, it's cool that they released it on the 3DS, but I haven't played the game much, but, like, I feel like it is best experienced on the GameCube. The 3DS is cool, but, like, the GameCube version is perhaps, like, my favorite way to experience the game.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree on that. I was really excited when the 3DS version came out, because I'm such a big fan of this game, and I have been since it came out. But it's just not quite right. There's some stuff that's off. I tried to update the graphics a little bit, for one thing, which was cool. I don't know if it... I don't quite know what it is, but it just doesn't look as good as I would have expected. I don't know if you agree.
No, I think I agree there. But isn't, like, if I remember correctly, aren't the controls a little bit weird as well? I think they're, like, you know, they're still pretty dang similar to, like, what the GameCube was, but because of how the, like, 3DS is kind of laid out, it's a bit weird compared to the GameCube, I guess.
Yeah. There's a little bit of a problem because on the GameCube controller, you obviously have two joysticks.
Yeah.
And you use both of them for this game. The 3DS has a joystick and then, like, a little nub thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But the other problem is not every 3DS has that. Only the new
XL,
3DS.
I think, right? Or is that just not even the XL, it's just newer releases?
The new 3DS XL has it. I don't know about the regular sized new 3DS. But the older 3DSs do not have the little joystick nub thing. So they kind of had to rework the controls a little bit, and it just doesn't feel as good as the original.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, if that's the only way you have access to this game, I would still recommend it. It's still a lot of fun, and it is pretty much just the original Luigi's Mansion. There's just a couple things that make it a little tougher to play on the 3DS.
Exactly. It's like, it's probably best experience on the GameCube, but playing on the 3DS is not going to make the experience, like, incredibly worse by any means. It's still Luigi's Mansion through and through. It's a wonderful game, but we'll get into that here in a second, starting with the story. I mean, yeah. It's
and the story... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. The story isn't really... it's not really complex when looking at, like, modern games. If you look at Luigi's Mansion story, it's not that complex. But for what the game is, it doesn't really need a complex story. Like, the story it's given works well, and the game does a good job with it, I guess is what I'm saying. I mean, you know, it's a simple story, and the game does a good job of making it a compelling story nonetheless. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a Mario game, so, you know, you go in expecting a pretty simple story. But the good thing is there's a little bit of a change up on the formula, I guess. You're not trying to rescue Princess Peach as you usually would in a Mario game. Instead, you're trying to rescue Mario himself, which is kind of interesting.
It's an interesting twist yeah, definitely.
Yeah, which is cool, because it's also, like, builds on the Mario and Luigi brotherhood relationship, which is cool.
It does, and we were talking about earlier how this is Luigi's first time, like, as the actual protagonist and, like, the main protagonist, but this is also the first time that there's, like, and maybe not the first time for, like, a different villain, but this is the first time that King Boo is a villain, and, you know, that's, like, a huge change from the regular pace of, like, Mario games, because, like, you know, usually it's Bowser's the protagonist against Mario, but here you have Luigi versus King Boo, which is, like, the first time he's, you know, like, the main villain in a Mario series game. It's a cool matchup. Yeah. The two characters are cool. You know, you have the less focused on Luigi and the new King Boo, who is a very cool villain in the Mario universe, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's probably one of my favorites, and like you said, this is his first, I think his first appearance ever. There might have been, like, Big Boo. I'm trying to remember. There were some bigger Boos before this, but I don't think there was ever actually a King Boo. This is the first time for him. I did a little bit of reading. Have any big Boos? I think it has some big Boos, but not King Boo.
Not King Boo, yeah.
Yeah. If he doesn't have the crown, then he's not King Boo.
He's not King Boo.
But yeah, I was going to say, I did some reading, because I didn't actually know what King Boo's motivation for kidnapping Mario was in this game. As soon as you start the game, you pretty quickly figure out that's what has happened. Or I guess it's you got to play a little bit before you realize who kidnapped Mario, but I never really knew, like, why, other than he's a ghost and he's a bad guy, but all I could find out is that King Boo just hates Mario and Luigi. It talked a little bit about how they would always defeat, like, his minions in previous games, but that's pretty much it. It doesn't say much. I guess King Boo's just kind of a bad guy.
Yeah, he's just a bad guy indeed.
It is also kind of cool that they didn't just go with, you know, Bowser as the bad guy again.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of is.
He kind of is, but it's like, it's him, but it's not him. It's King Boo basically, like, you know, I don't know how to put it, but, like, yeah, it's King Boo and, like, a robotic Bowser or something like that, right? I think I have that right, but yeah. Like, it's like that. Bowser's it's exactly in it, but it's not him, really. It's like the figure of Bowser's in the game, but it's King Boo, like, you know, pulling all the strings or whatever. Yes. And King Boo is, like, the main, you know, villain of this story, but the Boos also Boos in general just kind of have, like, a bigger impact on the story as a whole. Because, you know, there's King Boo, and then there are, like, regular Boos that we're all familiar with from, like, previous games that are helping King Boo in his, you know, his quest to mess with the Mario Brothers. And so, yeah, they get more time in the spotlight as enemies in the game. And it's cool.
Yeah, it's cool interesting because they've been enemies in the Mario series for a while before this game came out. But it's cool to see just, like, a generic enemy kind of turn into a bigger character. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like if they just took Goombas, you know, from your classic Mario enemy and made, like, more of a backstory and kind of a whole story around them as, like, the main villain.
Exactly.
It's interesting. Yeah. It's cool that they were able to do that because it doesn't seem like something you could pull off very easily, but they made it work for this.
They absolutely did, yeah. And on top of, like, the Boos being, you know, like, the Boos being introduced as, like, more prominent figures in the story, there's not really, like, I don't think there really is any, like, more, like, main characters introduced to the story that you interact with a lot, except for, you know, Professor Egad. I think that's, like, the only other person you really interact with the game besides, like, King Boo, Mario, and, you know, Egad. Because I think the ghosts you don't really interact with, you just kind of capture them or whatever. But yeah, I think Egad is, like, the only new character that, like, you interact with. He's there, and he continues to be there in, like, later series. But he's a cool character, He may be the only new one introduced that's like has a significant role, but he's a cool one. He's unique. He's an awesome character, adds a lot to the story. X is like a good guide.
Yeah, he's definitely cool. One of the things I like is how he's introduced is when, because especially when you play this game as a kid, like maybe it was just me, maybe I was just a coward as a kid, but this game actually creeped me out a little bit.
No, I can see it. I can definitely see it. I feel like I would have felt the same way, to be honest.
When you're expecting Mario, you're not thinking of like, spooky. And at the beginning, we've actually just been playing through this game recently, so we just saw this cutscene. But there's a part at the beginning where you kind of go into the first main room in the upper part of the mansion, and the ghosts attack you, and it's all scary. And then this EGAD guy comes out with like, it's it's very similar to Ghostbusters, but he's got this vacuum pack on his back, and he just starts like sucking up the ghosts, and it's kind of like a comedic relief. I feel like, I don't know, he balances out the spookiness nicely, especially if you're like a younger player. But even now, he's just a funny and kind of crazy character that brings a nice balance to kind of the darker tone of this game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, yeah, he's definitely a character that adds a lightness to the game. Not to say that Luigi's Mansion is like completely like, it's not on the level of like other horror games or whatever, but it's like, it's a spooky game, but then you got like EGAD who, adds, like you said, comedic relief, and he's just like a nice character to have around for those tense moments. But yeah.
Yeah, the other cool thing about EGAD, besides, this is kind of his series, I guess. This is really the only place that he appears besides some side games. I think he might have been in like one of the Mario Party games, in a little side game in there or something. But like we said, this game came out in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
The next year, Mario Sunshine came out in 2002. And you use this flood pack, which is kind of like a jetpack and water cannon thing in that game. And there's just a little detail that there's a logo of EGAD on that pack.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like he invented Flood, which is what the pack is called. But it's kind of cool that they just, without saying it, they kind of just made him like the inventor of that thing. And it was a cool little bit for people that had played Luigi's Mansion.
Yeah, it's a little nod to him, which is cool.
Yeah.
Well, now, I mean, we've kind of covered, like, the story. There's not much to go with it, but, we got the story. I think we should move into gameplay and kind of see how, show how that factors in to... Or how the gameplay makes use of the story and makes a compelling game,
Yeah, this game is really all about the gameplay. There is that little story that we talked about, but for the most part, this is all about the gameplay, and it's about the fun mechanics.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's kind of a unique concept, especially in the Mario series. It's just something that we never really saw before this point. So
yeah.
It's really cool to have this series that's kind of a breakaway from like the regular platformer stuff that Mario is so such a big representative of.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, like it's a different story, and it may not be a complex one, but the gameplay is like the main core of the game, and the way that it's used just makes the story like a fun way to digest the gameplay as you do it, I guess, is the way I'm putting that. That's probably not a good way to put it, but yeah, we'll explain that. But the main objective of this game is like, your goal is to capture King Boo, because obviously, he's captured Mario, so you gotta find some way to capture him. And like we were mentioning earlier, you encounter EGAD, and he kind of, you kind of become acquainted with him, and he kind of like helps you catch up on what's been going on and like making sense of what's going on in the mansion. And he kind of helps you arrive to the conclusion like, oh shoot, King Boo has captured Mario, I gotta save him. And he gives you the trusty Poltergust 3000 to take down all the ghosts that are in your way. And so, yeah, your main objective is to capture the ghost in the mansion and make your way to King Boo and eventually take him down. And it's a unique game mechanic that's awesome, because, I mean, I think up to this point there wasn't really anything like it. I mean, it's a game about, capturing ghosts with vacuums, which is quirky but awesome, It's cool. It's honestly one of my favorite game concepts, because it's just such a unique take that works so well and kind of goofily, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that's kind of interesting that I just noticed kind of after the fact, after playing this game for many years and then playing some other games, it's actually kind of a similar concept to the Resident Evil games, which is a totally, those are actual, like, kind of horror games, but this is almost like a simplified Resident Evil game, because you have to go from room to room, exploring the mansion, getting different keys, and it's just such a unique concept that besides those two series, Resident Evil and Luigi's Mansion, I can't think of a lot of other series that are really similar to that. So yeah, it's very unique gameplay. Now there are a couple of side objectives to this as well. Obviously, your main goal is to get your brother back, Mario, save him from the painting that King Boo has trapped him in. But the cool thing is there's some other objectives that you can kind of shoot for along the way that are a little bit more optional, but they make each playthrough a little bit more fun. Exactly, the first one is at the end of the game, you will get a mansion depending on how much money you've collected through the game. So you're kind of going through this haunted mansion during the game, but afterwards you use the money that you've collected to get a brand new mansion that is like actually a reward for Luigi finishing his objective, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I have gotten the top mansion a couple times before. It's not super hard, but it is kind of a little extra fun that you get to dive into, especially when you've played the game before. I don't know if you've ever done that.
No, I've done that before. It's like you said, it's not exactly like the hardest thing, but it adds a little bit of difficulty and like more exploration to the game, because a function in the game is like, you got to get money to get or you have to get money to get like and that influences which size of mansion you get. And I think you already said that, and I apologize if I'm reiterating that, but yeah, you go around exploring the mansion, and certain furniture or different items throughout the mansion can have money in it or whatever. And when you like, the more stuff you basically investigate, the more money you collect. And because if you're like aiming for a bigger mansion, that means you got to do more exploring and like searching, because there's sometimes like furniture or items that are more well hidden, and you need to like go find them, and they'll help you reach that goal, or that you need them to reach that goal, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and it's really cool because there's there's a whole different range of mansions you can get. If you do very badly, and I don't even know how you would do this badly, but if you just mess up or you're trying to avoid money, you can actually end up getting a tent.
It's a tent? I thought it was like a shack or something.
I think a tent is actually possible.
I didn't know that was possible, but that's awesome.
But like he said, you can also get a shack. You can get like a kind of standard size house. You can get like a deluxe house. You can get a small mansion. You can get a huge mansion. So there's a whole range, and you can look those up online if you want to see the different pictures of them. But it's always fun to shoot for the really big one, because it's a little bit of a challenge.
It's a bit of a challenge, yeah. And I think if you like look at it in like images or whatever, it's like, I don't even think it's like a mansion. It kind of looks like a resort of some kind. I could be wrong. That's just
it's massive, and it has like a giant L on it.
Yeah, It's cool. It's awesome. It's Luigi themed, which is cool. Like each thing is kind of Luigi themed, whether it be like green or like the giant L you said, but it's cool.
Yeah. And then the other thing you can do along with that is each ghost that you collect, At least for these ghosts that are called portrait ghosts. They're kind of the unique ghosts of the game, and we'll talk about them more in a little bit. But for each one you collect, you get to create a painting of them. They get kind of trapped in the painting, sort of like how King Boo trapped Mario in the painting.
Yeah.
And depending on how well you do in capturing that ghost, it will determine whether they have a bronze frame, a silver frame, or a gold frame. And the actual picture that is on their painting will change as well. And the way you change that is just by how efficiently you use your poltergust or your vacuum to vacuum up the ghosts. Mm-hmm. If you can do it very quickly, you will get a better portrait. And the other cool thing is you actually get more money when you do that in the form of pearls, so it helps your other objective too.
Yeah, so like you can basically go for a better mansion by going for like more efficiently trapping ghosts, because they like, depending upon how well you do capturing special ghosts, the portrait ghosts, they drop pearls, which are very valuable items that contribute to the overall wealth that you have at the end of the game. And if you do happen to get a gold portrait, like the best capture on a ghost, the ghosts drop like a big pearl and a bunch of other pearls, so it like, yeah, it benefits you to get a bigger mansion. And it's also more rewarding in that way for like trying to do better at capturing ghosts, because like in later installments, you do get money, but I feel like it's especially beneficial in this game in the series just because it gives you so much money. And it kind of like gives a nod to you, like, hey, you did this, because it shows you the portrait at the end when you like capture the ghost, like put him in a painting. It like shows the frame you got, and it shows that like beautiful golden frame that you got for all that hard work, and it's like, it's cool. It's more rewarding, it's more satisfying compared to other installments in the series, in my opinion. And yeah,
I think so too.
It's just overall a cool mechanic and the best done in the series, I think. Because yeah, it's satisfying.
Yeah. I really like when they add the side kind of objectives, because it gives you a little bit more to come back to and replay the game, especially because this game isn't very long, but it still makes you want to come back and play it again, because you can always go for those challenges, which make it a little bit more exciting, even if you already know what's kind of going on with this game.
Yeah, exactly.
But, moving on from there, like we said before, this game is pretty unique in kind of the style of its gameplay. The first thing that's very different from the Mario platformer genre is this is more of a third-person puzzle and exploration game.
Yeah, it's almost like it's like 2D in a way, though. Like
it's like a diorama, basically.
Yeah. It's like you are in third person, but you're at a fixed camera position that just kind of pans left and right. So like you're never like getting an entire view of the room. It's more just you're watching from one side of the room at all times and navigating the mansion, but it's still third person, like in how you navigate the rooms and like how the game feels. It's weird. It's a weird perspective, but it's a cool one in how they do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of like you're looking into a dollhouse.
Yeah,
but you're like
exactly
controlling Luigi moving through a dollhouse,
yeah.
Which is kind of a cool perspective. Well, like I said before, what you kind of do is you move into a new room. You want to find the portrait ghost and figure out what it is that's going to allow you to capture them. And like I said, we'll get to that. But when you complete a room, you usually get a key, and it lets you go to another room, and you might be kind of zigzagging across the mansion. But it's really cool because there's so many different rooms, and it's kind of a funny mansion because there's just some rooms that don't even make sense, but it brings a lot of nice variety. For example, we were noticing there's just a room called the mirror room.
Yeah, it's literally
all
just
is a room with a massive mirror in it.
Exactly.
And I don't know why a person would have that, but it kind of makes for a cool gameplay little section, because there are these ghosts that you can't see next to you, but you can see them in the mirror.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you have to like think backwards, and your controls are going to be a little bit reversed from what you're thinking. But there's a lot of stuff like that where each room has its own kind of gimmick, and then you collect a key and you go on to the next one. And each room is almost like its own puzzle, which I think is really cool. That's something that I really like about this first game in the series that I feel like some of them are missing a little bit now.
Oh, yeah. It's just, it's like, the new games just don't really, they don't innovate on, like, the puzzles and, like, the way you get from room to room, because, like, I think most of the time, I mean, in Dark Moon, there's definitely different ways. I don't remember Luigi's Mansion 3 as much because I haven't played it recently, but in Dark Moon, I think a lot of the time, like, it's literally just, clear a room and, like, either the key is just given to you or you literally, like, search some furniture or something. At least that's how I feel about it. That feels like that a lot of the time. But yeah, it doesn't innovate on the puzzles in the room. It's just like capture ghosts and then you get the key, you go to the next area, and it kind of repeats a lot in that way. In this game, it's amazing, like you said, because like not only are the rooms like unique from each other, like there's a mirror room like we just said, and that's like the most random room, but it's unique from other rooms. It's not really that much similar because it's a room dedicated to an entire mirror. Why? We have no idea. But it works because it's unique, it's its own room, and the game uses it in, like, a satisfying way for the gameplay and for, like, thematic reasons, which makes it work so well because you're not just putting it in there for, like, one specific purpose, it just works in every single way, and it's so satisfying because every room is like that in this game.
Yes. Now, the one thing I will say is, I wish there was a little bit of a better way to travel through rooms that you've already been to, because sometimes you do want to revisit rooms. There's stuff you can go back to do to collect money, or if you're going for the gold paintings, you sometimes have to restart from your save point because you messed up on capturing a ghost and you need to try again, and then you have to end up going all the way through the back of the mansion and through the backyard and back inside to get to whatever room. That was just one example, but we were kind of stuck on the
Biff Atlas, I believe.
Ghost. Biff Atlas, that's his name. Good old Biff. We got really stuck on him trying to get the gold painting, and it was just kind of a pain in the butt to have to walk back through the mansion, across the yard, back in just to try it again, and usually you'd have to do that several times over if it's a tough ghost. But the cool thing is, they at least put this one thing in. You have this little device that EGAD gives you called the Game Boy Horror, which is really, really cool. I like that they put the Game Boy in as an actual device. It's just a cool little Easter egg, But it's a Game Boy, but it lets you talk to EGAD. It's like a communication device. The other thing it does is it has a camera. And I don't know if the game actually ever tells you this, or if it's just a little trick that you figure out. But if you take a picture or inspect a mirror with the Game Boy Horror, you will actually teleport back to the first room of the mansion. So that's kind of cool. It's a little teleportation thing that saves some time if you need to get back to the front, but I wish there was a way to kind of travel between the mirrors or somehow get around a little bit faster.
And not only that, but like that little function is also used for some of the secrets in the mansion. Like, I think you can like inspect cheese. It's a weird thing to say, but you can like inspect slices of cheese hidden throughout the mansion, which will like reveal like gold mouse, or like it'll be like gold mouse creatures that like appear out of the cheese, and then you can get a ton of money from them. And so it's like little secrets that you can use and like discover with the device. And you can also, I think you can also identify like mouse holes, which will like teleport you to different rooms, or like adjacent rooms, I guess. And those are also like secrets and ways you get around the map. So it's a cool tool. It's definitely a creative way to like traverse the mansion. But yeah, it's you can do multiple things with that little inspect tool, and I think you can also like inspect ghosts and paintings as well. I haven't done that, so I don't know what it says, but I think you can like scan some of the portrait ghosts and it gives you a little bit of information or like some sort of text about them. But yeah, speaking of the portrait ghosts, that is perhaps like one of the best parts about the game, one of the best things that makes this installment in the series stick out from the others, because I feel like Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon and Luigi's Mansion 3 to a lesser extent don't really emphasize unique ghosts. Dark Moon dropped the ball on that so much, I feel like, because there's not a lot of unique ghosts. It's mainly just the same, like, green, red, and blue ones, I think is what they are. There's also, like, purple ones, I think. But yeah, they're not really unique. It's just, like, standard enemies that aren't really that defining in, like, characteristics. Whereas in this game, each room has, like, a ghost that fits the setting. Like, there's a study with a guy, like, I think, or with a ghost, like, rocking in a chair, and, you know, he's, like, reading a book, and, like, to capture him, you have to, like, look away from him, and he yawns as if he's tired, you know, getting sleepy from, like, sitting by the fireplace and reading his book. And there are just so many ghosts that, like, fit the theming of the room they're in, that it's, like, you can see that they put effort in the ghost's design and, like, gameplay aspects, because it fits each room. It's just, yeah. They did such a good job at making ghosts unique in this game, and I love it.
Yeah, me too. That's why I had a little bit of a hard time with Dark Moon, otherwise known as Luigi's Mansion 2 and Luigi's Mansion 3, because I just love the portrait ghosts so much in this game, and those didn't have anything really equivalent to that.
Yeah.
Not that they're bad games, but I really like the portrait ghosts, because that's really what makes each room in this game a puzzle, is you have to figure out what it is that will reveal the ghost, kind of figure out what their vulnerability is. Like, another example is there's a big fat ghost that's just pigging out in the dining room, and you can't capture him unless you get rid of his food, because he freaks out and he gets mad and he huffs and he puffs and then he gets all tired out, and that's when there's an opening for you to capture him. But you have to figure that out, and there's waiters that are, like, bringing him food, and you have to take care of them so that they don't replenish his food. So it's really cool how each section, each room is its own thing. Now, there are still the generic ghosts, like in the other games. There's, like, just your regular orange, blue, pink, you know. They're just very basic ghosts that kind of give you a little challenge between portrait ghosts.
Yeah.
And there's some variation in those too.
There's variation in them, and it almost feels like, at least in my opinion, it almost feels like the regular ghosts are also incredibly unique from, like, Dark Moon and Luigi's Mansion 3, because, again, like, those games are good. I enjoy those games, but when it comes to, like, the baseline enemies in those games, they're not really that unique, and they're used throughout the entirety of the game, and it kind of gets old. But, like, in Luigi's Mansion, there are a bunch of regular ghosts. They're not portrait ghosts, but there's also so many of them, and each one kind of has, like, a different character, that it's, like, it almost feels like the regular ghosts are treated as portrait ghosts, because, like you said, there's the orange, pink, and blue ones or whatever, which are regular, you know, and they all have, like, their unique personalities and, like, characteristics. But then there's, like, a green one that, like, eats bananas, throws them on the ground, and then teleports away or whatever. And that, like, adds an obstacle to the room. There's, like, Shy Guy ghosts, which is kind of, like, I think a nod at Shy Guys. They look like Shy Guys. I don't know if that was intentional, but I think it's, like, a nod at Shy Guys. And there's so many different ghosts like that it's, like, okay, these are regular ghosts, but they feel like they were treated as portrait ghosts as well, and it makes every experience kind of unique in how you're capturing ghosts, because there's a ton of variety, and you're always, like, it's always being, like, cycled through new ghosts to, like, keep you entertained, and it just works so well because of how many ghosts there are.
Yes, and then apart from those two different kinds of ghosts, there's also the boos on top of that. And the boos are pretty much an optional thing. I don't think you have to capture a certain amount to complete the game. Mm-hmm. But if you do capture every boo, and by the way, the boos show up in rooms that you've already completed, and the boo will kind of be playing hide and seek, and you have to find what, you know, object or piece of furniture or whatever that he's hiding in. But if you capture all of them, you get a gigantic money bonus at the end of the game, which helps you towards your mansion. So that's another cool kind of side thing in addition to the regular ghosts. But I think we would both agree that capturing ghosts is by far the most satisfying most difficult and most rewarding in the whole series.
Yes, absolutely. Because I just, I this is more opinionated, I bet, but like, I feel like it's more unique in Luigi's Mansion, the first Luigi's Mansion. I feel like it is the most unique because in 2 and 3, you have the Strobulb, which I don't really have a gripe with. It's just kind of an easy way to stun ghosts. Because in this game, you stun ghosts before capturing them by using your flashlight, and like when they're stunned, that's when you're able to capture them. And in Luigi's Mansion 1, you do that by getting close, and like the closer the source of your flashlight is to the ghost when you stun them, the longer they're stunned, allowing you to capture them. And it works the same in Luigi's Mansion 2 and 3, but you can just kind of hold down A and like charge up. Oh no, it doesn't work the same. Yeah, that's the issue I had with it. With the Strobulbs, if you hold down A, the longer you hold down A and release it, determines how stunned the ghosts are rather than like taking skill. So it's just kind of a simulator of holding down A and then releasing to stun the ghosts, whereas in Luigi's Mansion 1, you actually takes skill and you gotta get up close in order to like benefit yourself. So it's like, it's more difficult and like cool in that way. And then like we said with the portrait ghosts, if you do a good job at capturing them, you get rewarded with a ton of money, which is why it makes like why in Luigi's Mansion 1 it's so satisfying, because like you get more money, it's more difficult, it like feels, it's just a better system for capturing ghosts.
Yeah, I feel like it's just a little bit harder, and so it feels better when you finally do catch the ghost, because you're kind of trying not to break the what do you even call it, the like stream of gust coming out of your vacuum that connects like you to the ghost, because the longer you hold on to that, the more money you're going to get and the better portrait you're going to get, which is something they just didn't really reward as much in the sequels. So exactly, it just feels really good to catch ghosts like that. I really like the controls. I like the feel of it. So yeah, it's very rewarding.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it's time for our halftime Grub review, so we will be back to the game review in just a second.
And today's beautiful halftime Grub review is actually going to begin with a little discussion about what the difference between a chicken finger and a chicken tender is.
You know, I was very certain about my Pop-Tart opinion in the last episode, but my logic here may fall apart a little bit, but hey, I'm going to stand by what I believe, and that is...
See, you say that for this podcast, but I have heard you passionately defend your stance on the difference between these two delicious items many times. Many times.
I have, but I feel like you have swayed my opinion, because you make me question my own logic. I've found some like faults in my logic, but at the same time I still find some sense in it. I'll stand by what I believe. I believe that despite what they're called, it doesn't matter, a chicken finger is like a more sturdy strip of chicken than a chicken tender. Like, a chicken tender is a more delicate piece of meat and like typically features like maybe softer bread or more delicate breading on the strip of chicken, whereas a finger is more substantial in breading. Perhaps the meat is a little bit more substantial as well. It's like tougher, if that makes sense, but not in a disgusting way. It's just like, yeah, sturdier, if that makes sense. And I know that sounds weird. You may disagree with me, but that's my logic right there.
Okay, well actually, I almost agree, except I think it has nothing to do with breading at all. I think that it has everything to do with the type of meat that's used. Okay. If you're going to get technical, I also think that most restaurants use the terms pretty much interchangeably, and a tender is a finger and a finger's a tender.
Well, I think it depends upon the part of the body that, or the part of the chicken that like the meat is coming from sometimes.
See, like, you've definitely changed your tune here.
I have. This podcast. Like, well, no, I think that's what like the technical definition is, but a finger is sturdier. A tender is like a less sturdy chicken strip thing. I know that's probably like, it goes against the technical terms, but that's how I classify chicken strips. It's those two categories. It's possible.
I mean, a tender might be a more delicate piece of meat. That might be actually right.
Yeah, that might actually be true.
Because the tender is like the little flat part on the chicken breast, but it's not like the main part of the chicken breast.
Mm-hmm.
So You might be right about that, but I don't think it has anything to do with like the end product being a big bulky piece of fried chicken or a delicately breaded, more baked kind. I don't think it has anything to do with breading or like the process. I think it's all in the piece of meat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could agree with that. But
now I have to ask you, what is a chicken strip? Because you always had an opinion on this too.
A chicken strip? I think it's changed. I'm gonna be honest. I don't even know what to define a chicken strip as anymore. I don't even think strip has meaning anymore. I'm gonna be honest. I think a chicken strip just refers to a piece of chicken and has to be categorized into a finger or tender.
So it's like it can refer to either one, is what you're saying.
It can refer to either one. It's like if you have a bucket of unsorted chicken, you refer to those those as chicken strips, and then once they're actually sorted, they belong in their respective category, whether it be a finger or a tender.
This is interesting. I thought we were gonna have a real debate on our hands, but I actually have to agree with what you're saying.
My gosh.
Which is just weird because we never agree on anything when it comes to food.
I think you've swayed my opinions, I'm gonna be honest. It's crazy. But now, well, I wanna get into like ranking some of the common chicken tender places we go to. Sorry, chicken strip places we go to. Because
there you go. You got to use the correct terminology.
Correct terminology. My bad. This is a scientific process, after all. But yes, let's review some of the common chicken restaurants that we go to. And I think, for this episode, we're gonna stick to Culver's, Red Robin's, Texas Roadhouse, Cane's, Chick-fil-A, and Freddy's, because these are places we either commonly visit or we have recently visited and thought it was like a good candidate to review. So, I want to hear your listings first. Let's go ahead and hear yours. I'm curious to know what your opinions are.
Well, first of all, I have to just say, if anybody out there is offended that your favorite chicken strip restaurant is not on the list, I'm sorry about that. It's not that they're not great. Just feel free to let us know, and we'd be happy to try them. But these are our favorites. First of all, before we rank them, I want to ask you to go through this list and let me know, which of these places would you define as chicken fingers and chicken tenders in your experience?
Okay. Culver's? Ooh, that's a tough one. We're starting off with Culver's. By my definition, I have to say I think Culver's is a tender just because the breading is a lot lighter and softer, and the meat is still it's not that like substantial. I feel like it's just overall a more delicate piece of chicken, therefore making it a tender. So I'd classify Culver's as a tender. Robin's,
I agree with that one, but hang on. They have two varieties. Okay. I know you've never tried buffalo.
Oh, I haven't tried the buffalo, but yes, I will say buffalo, by the looks of it, looks like a finger.
Okay, I'm pretty sure we're on the same page about these things then.
Because I looked at the buffalo ones, and they look like it looks like the outside of a Red Robin strip, which we're about to get to here in a second. But yeah, it looks like more substantial. It's like Red Robin's, and Red Robin's is a textbook finger in my book, anyways.
Okay, that's fair.
This is where
by the way, Culver's, we know for sure, calls them chicken tenders, so we can't really argue that. Red Robin's refers to them as clucks and fries. Clucks could mean anything, so this is down to our own experience.
I think, Red Robin's is a finger, and you cannot argue that. And the reason why that is because when you look at the breading, when you try a Red Robin's chicken strip, the breading is absolutely substantial. We disagree on how it makes the experience of the chicken strip, because I personally like tenders more. I'm more of a guy that likes delicate breading and delicate meat. However, you like the thick breading of Red Robin's, and that's part of a finger. So Red Robin's is like a thicker breading.
No, wait, we're back to breading. I don't know if I agree on that. Although
I don't know. I feel like the breading is good. I feel like the breading is like a part of it, is what I mean. Like I feel like
it
breading
could
does
be
matter.
A finger, but it's not about the breading. Because I might like thick breading with a tender piece of meat, but anyway, I agree with you. Red Robin's is probably a finger.
It's a finger. Now, We go to
Now,
Texas Roadhouse, which again is another. Or no, it's not again. It's a tender. Like Culver's, it's a tender. It's definitely a different type of breading, but the meat, or it's definitely a different type of breading and meat at the same time. But it still falls into that category of being more delicate in both ways. So therefore, I think it's a tender. Would you agree on that front?
This is the one I've had probably the least experience with, but just by looking at it, it seems to be a tender.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't know the meat. I don't know how the meat is, but it just looks like the presentation you'd expect from a tender.
Yeah. Okay. But now, well, I think we agree there. Tender. Now we move on to Cane's, and I'm gonna be completely honest here. I had it like once or twice, and since then, I can't even remember, to be honest. So that might be a spoiler for our ranking, but I can't even remember the quality of a Cane's like chicken strip. So how would you rank it? I need to remember this. I need to.
Well, we'll get to our rankings, but
with the tender
as far as what
situation.
it is, this is probably the hardest one to determine because it seems like by the meat, you'd call it a finger, but it does have the more light breading, like you say a tender should have. So it's like one of those weird hybrid things, but I'm going to say it's a finger anyway.
I'm gonna be honest. I've come to the conclusion that I feel like breading matters more than the meat for classification. So by that definition, I feel like I would call that a tender.
All right.
I feel like that's a tender. I'm not sure. I'll have to give Cane's another
finger.
try just to get a more recent opinion, but I'm calling it a tender.
In fact, wait a minute. Because they might actually...
By the way,
what does Texas Roadhouse refer to them as?
Well, I think the meal is like... I think the chicken is like chicken critters or something like that.
Okay, so we don't know. But yeah. Raising Cane, the restaurant is literally called Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers, so I'm going to have to take the cake on that one. But it's okay. You just have a different definition.
Hey, you don't know what conspiracies are going on there. They may be making tenders and you don't even know it.
Maybe. You never know.
All right. Well, yeah. Cane's, we're not really in agreement on, I don't think. But Chick-fil-A, that's a difficult one. This might be the most difficult one that
I'd just here. Off the top of my head say it's a tender.
Actually, yeah, I think I agree with that. The breading for some reason is
check.
Ooh, oh, this is controversial in my mind, anyways. It's because Chick-fil-A breading can sometimes be like sturdy, or it can be like not as sturdy. Like there are bits and pieces that like branch off and they're like crunchy bits, and then they're like, like it's just kind of like on there delicately. So it's in terms of breading, it could be either one. But the meat, ooh, I feel like Chick-fil-A could be a finger. Meat. I feel like Chick-fil-A.
You gotta be kidding me.
Chick-fil-A could be a finger if there's enough crunchiness on the breading as well. Otherwise, it could be a tender.
I guess it's open to interpretation because officially they call it a Chick-fil-A chicken strip. So they don't even know what they're serving. It's in the category of strips, but that doesn't tell us anything, as we've previously discussed. Mm-hmm. So I guess we'll just have to... I call it a tender, you call it a finger.
I guess so. Alright, and then lastly, Freddy's. Freddy's is another one where I think it's like... It's maybe not as textbook as Red Robin's chicken strip, but I think Freddy's is also a very clear finger, just because I feel like it's more substantial breading, and the meat I feel like also falls into that category. That's probably the one I noticed the meat is most like a finger by definition. I don't know if you agree with me on that, but it feels that way.
I do agree on that, and it's pretty similar in all its other qualities to a Red Robin cluck.
Yeah.
So... Mm-hmm. I think that makes it a finger for me.
Absolutely.
But now, let's go through... So, those restaurants for everybody, once again, were Culver's, Red Robin, Texas Roadhouse, Cane's, Chick-fil-A, and Freddy's. We are going to give you our own personal lists from worst to best, let's do, of how we would rank their chicken strips.
Should we do this side by side, like make our way up together, or should we do one at a time?
We could do... No, just give me your whole list.
Okay. We're gonna start. By the way, I do not use ranch, but he uses ranch a lot. So ranch definitely varies from restaurant to restaurant. But it varies from restaurant to restaurant, but it heavily influences how the quality of the chicken you're enjoying is. I don't use ranch too much, but it definitely does affect that quality. And since you enjoy ranch, I'm assuming you're gonna factor that in, right?
Definitely. Well, that I don't know if it's fair to the chicken strip though. I feel like we might have to come back and do another episode on sauces, or even ranch specifically, because it wouldn't be fair to the quality of the chicken strip.
So we're going
judge it based on ranch.
We're going plain chicken strip here, is what we're talking.
Yeah.
Okay, I got that. All right, let me start off here. My absolute worst ranking out of the 6 that we're doing today is Cane's, and the reason why that is because I can't exactly remember the experience I had eating at Cane's, and given that it's probably not that memorable, so I'm gonna put it at the bottom just because I don't think it's probably that memorable, meaning it's not my favorite. But we'll move on to the next one, which I actually do remember, and that is Red Robin's. I'm gonna be honest. Red Robin's chicken is too crunchy. The breading is way too thick. It's way too finger-like, and because I'm a tender fan, it just doesn't do it for me. It feels tough at times. It's like, I don't know if Red Robin's has it for me.
That hurts, man. That hurts.
Hey, that's just how I feel about Red Robin's, okay? But then we have Chick-fil-A after that. I feel like Chick-fil-A, it's good. It's definitely good. I enjoy it, but I wouldn't say it's like my absolute favorite chicken. I'd say it's middle of the road. It's good. I don't know if I'll put it as one of my favorites, but it's good. Freddy's, I feel like Freddy's does a better job than Red Robin's does than their like chicken fingers. So Freddy's is my third because I feel like it's less substantial, but it's not completely underdoing it. So it's like it's a balanced chicken finger, which is why I put it at number 3. I feel like it's a balanced chicken finger there. And then Texas Roadhouse is number 2. I love their chicken. I love it so much. But I feel like the breading, I don't know if I'm a huge fan of the breading. Ooh, actually. It might be tied with Culver's at the top, to be honest. They're both really good. I'm gonna put Texas Roadhouse and Culver's tied because they both have really good breading, really good meat quality. It's just they're both wonderful. I think they're both very good tenders, and I'm a tender guy, so they both tie at the top.
Okay. Sounds good. I can mostly respect it. I don't know how you could do this to Red Robin, but
I'm sorry, man. It's just how it has to be.
I respect the list. For my list, I actually put Texas Roadhouse at the very bottom, but I don't know if it's fair because I haven't really had them that much. The only thing that really influences this is you had them served to you raw one time.
One time.
That, not having eaten them very much, that kind of taints their reputation for me. Yeah. So that's all I can say about that.
Well, when they're done right, they're done right.
Okay, well, I gotta try them then. Next is Chick-fil-A.
All right.
I like Chick-fil-A, but for a chicken strip, I am just not on board with the breading of this thing. It's maybe the peanut oil or whatever, seasonings they put in the breading, but it's almost like a sweet flavor, and it just doesn't work for me.
I will say, in nugget form, I feel like that format does work out well, but in chicken strip form,
still, I don't know. It's okay in nugget form, but anyway, they're just not my favorite. Yeah, but that's okay. Next up is Cane's. Now, I think that Cane's could be better, and I know a lot of people really like Cane's. The problem I have is that they always come out so greasy that they're like wet. It's like a wet chicken finger.
Ooh, I don't know if
I like them very crispy and crunchy, and that's not what you get because they're so wet, which is just weird. It doesn't need to be that greasy. I don't know if they just don't drain it, let it dry long enough after they take it out of the fryer or what, but don't love that. I would say that the meat is pretty good quality, so at least it has that. Culver's is next. Probably if you asked me yesterday, Culver's would have been higher up the list. But today we had Culver's. I got the chicken tenders, and they were not good. The meat was pretty weird. There was just like this whole strip inside of it that I didn't want to eat because it was so rubbery.
Yeah, I definitely
that kind of ruins an experience. Go ahead.
I definitely feel like Culver's, it's a good chicken strip. Like, I ranked it high, but I will say I feel like 90% of the time it's good, but that other 10% of the time there is that long strip of meat, like you said, that's kind of like it's rubbery. It's not like the rest of the meat you can't eat, but it's just like, oh, I've been interrupted by this kind of disgusting piece of meat. And yeah, it's good meat, but that is definitely a restaurant where I notice it happens a couple of times.
Yeah. That being said, besides that, it's a really good chicken tender. When the meat, when you don't have that happen, the meat is really good quality, and the breading is nice. It is a light breading. It's weird that I put this at number 3 because I like a thick breading, but it's just, I don't know. It has a nice crunch to it, and the meat is usually good quality. So that's number 3. Number 2 for me is Freddy's. I've never really had any bad meat experiences with Freddy's. When we say bad meat, it's not like, it's gonna make you sick or anything, but just weird pieces in the meat. Yeah. And I haven't really had that at Freddy's at all. And they have a nice crunchy breading, which is great. I love those thick breadings. And that is also why I make Red Robin my number 1 pick.
My gosh, how dare you? No, I'm joking.
I did say I wasn't going to let ranch come into the conversation, but their ranch is so good. And I feel like that just kind of automatically puts those at the top for me. Because those and Freddy's are pretty close to the same thing, but I don't know. Red Robin's just takes it.
Takes the cake, yeah.
So that's my list.
My goodness.
You kind of put the tenders at the top, or the light breading, I guess, and I put what you would call a finger, and what I would call just thick breading. But
I feel like it's just kind of reflected in our listings. I'm a tender guy, you're a finger guy. Nothing wrong with that.
That's okay.
All right.
Anyway, those are our lists. We would love to hear from our beautiful listeners out there what your favorite chicken strip restaurants are. If we didn't mention some of your favorites, let us know what we need to try next.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're going to give you our overall Grub rating for chicken strips.
And we're just talking like overall, like, we're not talking about like...
Just overall, just the food, just
an enjoyable
as a category.
Food, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. I feel like I rated Pop-Tarts too high, and I feel like I would rate chicken strips too high. So I'm gonna put it at like a 3. It's slightly above like middle of the road, I'd say. It's an enjoyable thing, an enjoyable meal to have.
That is shocking to me with the amount of chicken strips that you've eaten in your life.
I feel like I can't overdo it. I feel like if it's gonna be a 5 or like 4 Grub rating, it has to stick out in some way. Which, it's good, but I can't say like a chicken strip is like the most mind-blowing experience ever. It's just a deep fried piece of chicken.
Alright, well, I'm going to say when a chicken strip is really at its best, I'm giving it a 4.
You're giving it a 4?
I think it's that good. I know it's not gourmet, but I don't care. It's a nice comfort food, It's just,
yeah.
It's always there for you. It never lets you down.
I gotcha.
So, yeah, I think they're really good. And there's a lot of places you can get them, which is also nice.
They're never short of
supply. Yeah, there you have it. Our overall Grub rating for chicken strips, that includes tenders and fingers, is a 3.5 average, I guess.
Not too bad. All right.
Not bad.
And now back to our game review. We're gonna pick up at like a place where we're just gonna like compare this to how the other games compare to it. We're gonna compare it to the other games in this series, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because there's definitely a lot to unpack here. And I will say, I'm gonna start this off strong. I know it's a Mario franchise game, but Luigi's Mansion, the first one, is the scariest in the series. And I know that sounds really dumb, but like I feel like the theme of being scary is emphasized more and like I guess done better just because there's less goofiness. Like Luigi and Egad serve as like the comedic relief to make it lighter and like feel like that Mario game. But when it comes to like the ghosts and like the just theming of the mansion, it feels pretty dark and grungy. It's like, man, I could actually get spooked like this. And like you said way earlier in the podcast, I could actually get scared to this as a kid, you know? It's like it's a dark environment. It does it well. Whereas like in Luigi's Mansion 2 and Luigi's Mansion 3, it just feels like being dark just to fit the ghostly format, otherwise it's a goofy game, you know? I feel like they way overemphasize the goofiness in Luigi's Mansion 2 and Luigi's Mansion 3. And it's not bad. I'm not saying you need to make the Mario, like, a Mario game that's focused more on, like, spooky stuff, like, absolutely horror focus. But I don't want it to, like, be absolutely goofy, you know? Luigi's Mansion 1 balances it out perfectly, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree. That's a big part of why it's my favorite one. The other thing that I think is nice about this, just compared to Mario in general, is that it's not so much about like reaction time and, you know, platforming and just getting through a level. In fact, there are no levels. It's all one big level. Mm-hmm. But it's a lot more about thinking and exploring, and that's just kind of a nice change of pace from other Mario games. As far as comparing it to the other Luigi's Mansion games, I agree with you on the kind of darker setting, mm-hmm. and also just the gameplay mechanics. It just feels better to capture ghosts, and the portrait ghosts make it a lot more interesting, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Not to say that those other games don't have their good points, but I just personally prefer this one.
It just, Luigi's Mansion, the first Luigi's Mansion did the best job at did the best take on the series to date. That could change in the future if they're going to make more Luigi's Mansions. But yeah, I feel like Luigi's Mansion 1 had the best take on the series to date. It kind of did every aspect better, but not to say that the other games are bad, like you said. Yeah, there are very good aspects to each of those games that make them worth playing. But I can't. I want to compare this to like other modern games today. They may not relate incredibly to like the theming and like the gameplay, but I want to compare this game to modern games because if you compare this game is a lot shorter compared to a lot of games that are out there today. And I will say, I feel like shorter games, I've come to realize that shorter games can often have a lot more quality than games that go for length. Just because, like, there's so much more packed into that short amount of time than there is across that long game, or those long games out there. Which makes the experience worse in those long games because you have less content to go through all those hours. Whereas in Luigi's Mansion, sure, it's going to be a short, like, what would you say, like 4 or 5 hours?
Yeah,
something like that.
I think that's all it takes.
Yeah, like in that short 4 or 5 hours, it may be short, but you're gonna have a lot of like different personality in the ghosts, the environment, and like the characters. Just all the interactions are gonna be a lot more fun and like cool to witness. And yeah, I just think it's a short game in today's day and age, but it holds up a lot better because the quality in that short amount of time is just so good.
Yeah, I agree with that. It would have been nice if it was just a little bit longer,
mm-hmm.
You know? Maybe like another 2 hours, because that's still a pretty short game. But,
it is, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they've just packed so much quality into the time that you're playing. And a lot of games these days, just for the sake of making it like a 100+ hour game, they make it just a little bit too sparse. There's just not enough going on throughout the whole game. There's like little pockets of cool stuff, but the thing about this is that it's just fun the entire time. There's not any point where you're like, this is just a drag. So
yeah,
I think that's one of the things that older games had going for them that sometimes they're missing a little bit these days. Not that there aren't still good games out there, but especially Nintendo games are still great. But overall, I think some games could take a lesson from Luigi's Mansion and just go for quality over quantity.
Absolutely, yeah. All right.
But I think that's pretty much all the time we have today.
Yeah.
Overall, Luigi's Mansion is an absolutely fantastic game. If you haven't played it before, you should definitely give it a try. Yeah. It's probably going to be a little bit tough to find it on GameCube. I mean, you might find it used, but if you have a 3DS, that's another way you can play it.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's definitely a buy. It's a worthwhile game. It may be rather short, but like we said, it's gonna be a fun 4 or 5 hours throughout the game. Like, there's just so much personality and so much feeling to it that it's a worthwhile buy.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about a lot of the Nintendo games is that even if they're short, like, this is a game I've played more times than I can count since it came out. I don't get bored of it. You take a little break for a while and then you want to do another playthrough. And any game that's like that is definitely a good game. So, yeah, Luigi's Mansion is a ton of fun.
Oh, yeah.
Aside from that, I just want to thank everybody for listening. If you wouldn't mind leaving us a review, it would help us a lot in getting our show out there to new listeners. You can also follow us to make sure that you don't miss any new episodes. And if you'd like to send us some fan questions or comments that we might read on the show, you can either send those to our email, which is gamesandgrubpod@gmail.com, or you can find us on X or Instagram at gamesandgrubpod.
Yep. Alright, well, thank you all for listening so much. Keep gaming and keep grubbing.